My name's Adolfo Romero. Today is February 7, 2022, and today we're here on behalf of the Samuel Proctor Oral History Program with
Bianca Quinones.
And today, Bianca and I will be having a discourse a little bit on La Casita, which will be part of Nuestras Historias and the Latinx Diaspora in the Americas collection. So to begin with, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, Bianca, and what is your role at the University of Florida?
Yeah, definitely. So as I mentioned, my name is Bianca Quinones. My pronouns are she, her, ella. And just like a little bit about me, my family lives in Oregon. And then after undergrad, I moved to Texas. I did my master's in higher education administration, so like working with institutions. And then after being there for a bit, I then ended up moving here for this job. I actually had my summer internship in between my graduate program here with MFOS. Oh. So like I love MFOS. But then I was able to come here and like secure this job. So currently I serve as the program director of the Office of Hispanic Latinx Student Engagement. We just had a name change, so if I refer to HLA, Hispanic Latinx Affairs, it's the same thing. It just HLA rolls off the tongue a little bit smoother. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. So how long would you say you've been working now over here at the HLA?
Yeah, so I actually started, I want to say July 1st of 2019. So like well over 2.5 years, like a couple months over 2.5 years. Yeah.
Okay, can you tell me a little bit about your role and as, what is your role in the Casita as a director?
So I think that every director comes in and like does their role a little bit differently. For me, I very much saw it as like I'm the director, and really wanting to like grow HLA. So HLA is not only La Casita. La Casita is a part of HLA. And so like the umbrella office is HLA, and then under it is La Salita, which is actually in the Rights Union, like on the second floor. And that is kind of like in this shared space within the Center for Intercultural and Multicultural something.
Was that part of
CIME?
Was that part of the MCDA before it got converted, right?
Yes. Okay. So it's MCDA, except now it has a new name, which is CIME, Center for Intercultural and Multicultural. I forget the name right now, but anyways, so HLA is like La Salita, and then it's us, so like Casita. So both of the spaces make up HLA, and I think people think that it's only Casita, but it's not. It's actually both of the spaces. So it's having to manage like both spaces. We have like student ambassadors from when I started. I think we had 8 student ambassadors, and now we've grown up to 12 student ambassadors. It's managing a budget, which like the budget didn't increase when Casita opened. It just stayed the same, which has been about like $25,000, like give or take, every year that I've been here that I've received a budget. Supervising a graduate assistant. So I've had like 2 super amazing graduate assistants. Both of them have been part of the SPHE program. It's programming, it's like initiatives. For me, it was like strategizing. It's been fundraising. For like Giving Day, but then also talking to like the foundation. It's been creating like standard operating procedures for Casita as it opened. What else do I do? Like creating partnerships. Since I've been here, kind of one of my big things was about, so there's a professor, like a Black Latina scholar so Amalia Dache, and she talks about like expanding the boundaries of Latinidad. And so really talking about like intersectionality within like the Latinx diaspora, and really like educating our students on that to be Latinx doesn't only mean one thing. It doesn't only mean that you speak Spanish. It doesn't only mean that you like phenotypically look like me. It doesn't only mean that you're from like one place. It can mean a lot of things, and really like educating them on how as a global community we're a lot closer than like society makes us think. So for example, like we have Black Latinx. Filipinos could be considered a part of the diaspora. Haitians, Jamaicans, etc. could be considered part of the diaspora. And like the world, I think historically, because of migration and colonization, etc., we're all connected a lot closer than we think. So, yeah.
All right, thank you for that. A question I have, if we could like backtrack just a little bit before La Casita reopened. Can you tell us a little bit on that process? How did it reopen? And at that point, what happened during those couple years that they were building? Did they still get money at that side? Or how were people dealing with that transition?
Yeah, so I actually have like some kind of context because I was here as like a graduate student in the summer of 2017. Excuse me. From what I know and what I understand, like Casita first became a thing in like, I think I want to say 1994, but maybe 1993, because some students came together and they said like, you know, we're seeing a lot of us here, we need our own space. And so at the time, I think like leadership had an affinity for the community. And then this like space, the old Casita building used to be for like international students. And so from there, they ended up getting moved somewhere else. And then this became like La Casita, the old Casita. I call it Casita just because like to say La Casita, like who cares? But anyways, so if I say Casita, I mean like La Casita. And so then from there, the students had this like rickety old house. They actually had to fight with like SG to be able to get it like furnished. I don't even know if SG like supported with the furnishing. So they pretty much had like an empty building. But then, so because of Florida being Florida, the building was old, humidity and like termites and stuff, like people, like it was falling apart is what I've heard. And so I think it was either early, like fall 2016 or spring 2017, where they like closed off Casita and the IBC. And pretty much they were just kind of like dangerous to be in. And so by that time too, from what I understand, the Rights Union had been like remodeled, the new part. So then that's where like the old MCDA was, to which is where like Salita and then the BEC were. So students now had that place and not only Casita to come to. So it was like kind of a good transition. So I remember that summer, like, Gigi, she was an intern with MFOS. We like crossed the street or something and she like showed me. And so there was just like yellow tape all around both of the buildings. And she was like, oh yeah, like that's La Casita. That's like where everybody hangs out, like our community, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, cool. But then from there I was just like, all right, whatever. Like we had a cultural center at my undergrad. Like it's cool that it's getting renewed. But then I got hired. Apparently that summer there was like a protest. I only knew kind of like from the administrators that something was happening with the institutes, but I didn't like think about it that much just because that's not where I was connected. I was connected with MFOS and like doing stuff there. However, I would sometimes see like Will and MK like, I don't know, like talking and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, something's happening, but I didn't know what was happening until I finally got here. And so when I finally got here, like working, which was summer of 2019, I feel like the foundation was kind of done. Maybe like the bare bones like of the building in terms of like it was a building, but it was just like concrete pretty much. Okay. So like I guess like once you layer everything in concrete, or yeah, I'm not a builder. And so I remember the first time, so we would have meetings like every Wednesday with like the architects and then the construction crew, administrators like me, and then at the time the Black Affairs Director, Carl. And they would like tell us about different things that were happening, like if they had questions or just like different things that they were putting in. It was very like construction heavy, but I would try to like understand and ask questions like if I needed to. I remember my like first tour, I was like, this is it? Like, this is small. Because everybody was like so excited and they're like, the new casita, blah, blah, blah. But the space seemed very small. Like, I thought it was going to be a lot bigger. I thought it was going to be grander. I thought that the conference rooms were going to be like really great. But they were just small. That's all I remember. Just like being kind of disappointed. Like, this is it. This is what y'all are excited for. But then they ended up finally like building the buildings, and we had the grand opening November 17th, 2019. And so I remember, so like Black Affairs, I think had theirs on Saturday, had their grand opening on Saturday, and then we had our grand opening on Sunday. Mm-hmm. And that day, I think, is like one of my favorite days, like here at UF.
Still remember.
Yeah, it was like cold outside, and it was kind of like nublado.
I remember.
It wasn't raining, but it was kind of like misty. Then
I remember the rituals, like the ritual, like the gentleman, like he was supposed to be like, if I'm not, like an ancestor, like almost, like, and kind of like bring like a ceremony to reopen La Casita and everything.
Yes. And so, I mean, like they asked, like what's something that's like very like Latinx, blah, blah, blah. But I think our diaspora is so big and so different and so like diverse that there was really like nothing that I could think of. Like Black Affairs, they were like, okay, we're going to sing the Black National Anthem. And I was like, okay, cool. Like we don't have something like that. Somebody was like, you should play Gasolina. Oh, and I was like, okay. I mean, that's kind of like Latinx national anthem, but but I was like, no, I don't think that'd be appropriate. But what's it called? Yeah, I wanted to be able to like bless Casita. For me, it was very much of like, so I used to watch like ghost house stories on Netflix, and I noticed that the people who would get haunted were all like never blessed their house before the house was haunted. And so that, but also just to kind of like give some recognition to like the indigenous folk, because we always talk about like land acknowledgements, but we don't do anything, right? And UF is a land grant, so most likely than not, the land that UF is on was most likely stolen from indigenous people by like horrendous means. And so kind of wanting to like bring that back to the community and essentially just like bless the space and people who were walking into the space, to which like Mr. Whitehorse was super like grateful for. But yeah, we had like the blessing as people were coming in. We did like the ribbon cutting, and I remember we had like food that was catered. I think we had like some what do the Colombians eat?
Ñapa?
Arepas.
Arepas.
Yeah, like arepas. I remember I wanted it to be fruit cups, like Mexican fruit cups that you put tajin and like,
mango and everything.
Yeah, that they're like the little cups, and then you grab like the pepino or whatever. But they were just kind of like chopped up, and I was like, this is not the vision, but okay. And then I think we had like some agua de horchata or like, yeah, it was good.
No? I thought, I don't know, maybe that was another time.
I don't know.
Too many events in here.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But I think like what I remember most though was just like the students being so excited, like coming in. like everybody dancing in the courtyard. There was like a playlist, and like people were dancing. Like when Gasolina did come on, like everybody was out there. It was just so alive, like so. It was like a party. It was
That's
like,
right.
yeah.
I have a question on that. So I remember that they, like you're mentioning, but I also remember when I came in, I'm like, what's going on? Is it like everything done? Like, because at that point I remember like, they're like, yeah, we're doing the ribbon, but they're still fixing the second floor. And then I'm like, well, where's all the artwork? Where's all
Yeah.
the Latinidad that we're talking about? Like, this looks almost like another office, UF institutional office out there. So what was that all about?
Yeah, so there was a big push to like open the buildings, I think in October. But then I don't know what happened. I don't quite remember, to where they were like, okay, well, we'll be able to open the buildings, but like in November. However, not everything's going to be completed yet. And so I want to say like this past year, I don't even remember quite when, because like our history walls weren't installed, like our flag wall, the Instagram wall. I feel like all of that got installed, or like was getting installed. I want to say either like late spring of last academic year, so 2021, and or this summer. I don't quite remember. Like the pandemic has messed up my mind. But yeah, it just like wasn't ready yet. So what happened was that like the people that we were working with, they were in California, and they were the ones who were like the graphic designers for like the different things. And they said, you know, like they then have to find people who are going to be able to make those things come to life, like their ideas come to life, and actually like create it and like cut wood and stuff. And like they have to price it. So from there they have to figure out like, okay, so we have 3 different price points, UF, like which ones do you want to go with? And then they contract with that company, and then they make it, and then they come and install it and everything. I think it was a man from like Minnesota that came and like installed everything. He came a couple times. Yeah.
Do you think La Casita has lived up to what it's supposed to be for Latinx communities? Do you think there's much more that can be done?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts? And where are we right now? I guess like from when it opened to this point, like where are we on that stage?
Yeah, for sure. I think for me, no. So I think that the hopes for the institutes were like a lot higher. For students, I would say yes and no. Yes, in that it is, and they don't know any better, right? Like they've never been to another institution a lot of times. Like they've never seen anything better. But like when I look at the blueprints of Casita, a fifth of the space isn't usable. Like, because the elevator, I mean, you're not going to hang out and study in the elevator. The like storage spaces, you're not going to hang out and study in there. There's a lot of like tech rooms. I think there's like 2 or 3 tech rooms. The stairs that are in the back. So like actual spaces where students can like live and commune and be and study in, which is what essentially this space was for. No. There's also like HSA is a huge organization. Like they can't hold a GBM here. Their GBMs are too big. The biggest space that we have is like the event space and the second floor, and that space like comfortably, I would say can maybe fit like 40 people with the door closed. Probably even less, like 30. And so truly, if you wanted to have class there, it would have to be a small class. I know that I had a class this past semester, first year Florida, in there, and we had about 20 students, and like with tables and chairs, like we barely fit. So no, I don't think so in terms of like actually physically looking at the space. But for the students, like they do enjoy coming here. They do enjoy like using the study rooms. They do enjoy like seeing each other. However, also when we think of like who's actually coming, we don't really see graduate students. international students, like every once in a while. It's mostly students who are like HSA and like fit the like Latinx, I guess like stereotype. So I've had students who come in and it's their senior year and they're like, I've never been here before. And I was like, what? Why? They're like, I don't speak Spanish. I'm like, you don't have to speak Spanish to come in here. You don't even have to speak Spanish to be considered Latinx. Like, what do you mean? They're like, no, I never thought that this place was for me because I didn't speak Spanish. And I'm like, bro, like we have so much work to do with that. But even just like, I took some classes last year and like our Black Latinx students, like they were never considered when thinking about how these buildings would be constructed. And even I did some research on like the No La Visita, right? Which was like the protest that ended up happening that summer that I like mentioned, Will and MK and stuff. That's what was happening. Like the students were protesting. They didn't want like a U-shaped building. And I think that just student development at that time, and probably even now, wasn't where it needed to be in terms of understanding like race and ethnicity. There's quotes where students are like, oh yeah, like Latinx, we're a race, like we need to know our own race, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, but it's not a race. Like we are an ethnicity. So there are Black Latinos, there are Asian Latinos, there are white Latinos. And like, I think that sometimes doesn't help like students who are not part of like the stereotypical Latinx person. They don't feel welcome here. Or they don't see themselves represented here, which I think that's what I've been trying to really work on during my time here. So like we have some like wooden flags right there, but like the LGBTQ flag and like the trans flag, we had a collaboration. Because upstairs we have like a wall with a whole bunch of wooden flags of like of countries in Latin America. However, I wanted to expand that, and so like we have the LGBTQ and the trans flag, and we did an event to like talk about that intersectionality, so that students who are Latinx and queer can feel comfortable coming here and know that this space is also for them. We also did it with like the Filipino flag, the Haitian flag. We're planning on doing it with like the Jamaican flag. And like we asked the student organizations to come so that they can also be part and come and see it and know that this place is also for them. So I think that's helped a little bit. I know that I've started to see some kids from like Club Creole, come in here like and feel a little bit more comfortable. I know that I've seen some students who are like part of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, which is like historically Black fraternity, come in here and just like hang out. To which I'm like, okay, cool. Like we are starting, like people who are part of the diaspora but maybe don't historically like see themselves represented, are starting to know and understand that this space is also for them.
Do your higher ups, do they offer full support in your vision of like what La Casita should be? Or how do you feel about that? Like, is there anything else that could change on that end, or?
Yes and no. So, I think that there's different ways to offer support to a vision, right? So, like in meetings that I've had with advancement. So this was the idea. Our budget didn't grow like from when there was only Salita to now having Salita and Casita. And then COVID hit, right? So there's that. But the idea was that somebody would want to endow Casita to then allow for that money to then become programming money. So there hasn't been anybody who's endowed the space yet. So like the money still stays the same. However, as I've been having conversations with support of like my administrators, my higher ups, of like what can HLA or Office of Hispanic Latinx Engagement be, they support what I say, right? They're like, oh yeah, that'd be great. when it comes to like programming. So I have like a 4-year model from application to vocation, and then kind of like loops around, and like that we should be talking to students and their families from when they're applying to UF, and like still supporting them like once they start working, because then like that's when they start giving money back, right? And then like every year in between, then having like some type of different initiative to support their trajectory throughout the time here. So like that's supported, but when it comes to like we need more people, like I feel like that's not.
More people as in like more students coming in or more staff coming in?
More staff, so like more full-time
position.
Yeah. And actually like my position as like director, like Casita used to have a director, and that person was like the know-all be-all for La Casita. And students, like originally they wanted somebody with a PhD, like they wanted somebody who would hold like some kind of status on campus as a representative for like the Hispanic Latinx community. But I feel like slowly that's been like diminishing, so much so to where like when I came in, my colleagues who pretty much held the same like role as me, just in different areas, were directors of their space. And when I came in, it was very much clear of like, you are not a director, you are a program director. And so pretty much like my title got decreased. And then now recently I've been told that I'm like entry level, whereas like my position description was not entry level. They were very much seeking like 3 to 5 years of full-time experience. But like, to me, it's kind of like, stay in your lane, know your place, like you're entry level, but don't want me to do entry level work.
So what do you think the institution itself, or why are they acting the way they're acting? Do you think that's just like UF bureaucracy on that, or it's just their decisions that, do they have power to change that? I guess that's my question.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that's a lot of it is politics, right? So, I mean, DeSantis is very much, even though we think that he doesn't like play an active role, I think that he very much does play a role. With like the new name change, I was like, why are we still using multicultural? That's very like 1970s. It's not progressive, it's not moving forward. And like it was said that, you know, like the state isn't ready for that. And we do very much still report to like the Board of Regents, who then like report to DeSantis, etc. And so I think a lot of it is politics. But then I think also even just like money. Apparently there's been like budget cuts because of COVID. I'm not privy to that information. I'm entry level. So I obviously wouldn't know. But I think because of that, right? Like, and I think just higher ed as a whole is very much like, it's built on white supremacist values, right? So like, higher education is going to get the most out of you by paying you the least. And like, I think that's why there's such a high like turnaround rate for these roles. In 10 months, like everybody who I was here with, who I like started with, well, as like program directors or directors, within 10 months, like we've all left or are leaving.
Do you think it's, why aren't they paying enough, I guess? Like, do you think that's what it is? That's the issue, that have they lowered those positions down, you know, in wages, or they used to be high and now they're lowering them down, or?
Yeah. So, I mean, I can tell y'all, this is like, so when I came in at 50K. Okay. So this is like with a master's. I had 4 years of full-time experience. Not all of it in higher education, but still 4 years of full-time experience. So I came in at 50. However, the person before me, I had heard, was making, I think maybe like 65 or 70. However, they had also been in kind of like an associate director. So they were kind of like half and half for a bit. Half associate director, half like director of HLA. My colleague within Black Affairs from when I was here that I saw was closer to like the 58, 59. And like we had about the same responsibility in terms of like 2 buildings. However, unfortunately, like the Black community at UF is like decreasing more and more, while the Latinx community is increasing more and more. The Asian director, I think, was maybe at like 55, 56. And then the LGBTQ plus director came in after me. They came in like 6 months after me, and they started at 50 as well. So throughout my whole time here, so I believe in pay equity, and I know that Latinas get paid like 53 cents to the white man's dollar. So I'm always advocating for myself as much as I can. And so I would always ask for a raise. I ended up getting one this summer. They took me from 50 to 53. But by that time, like my colleague within Black Affairs was already gone. And I've always made the case of like, yo, I'm managing 2 spaces, right? So like my APITA, Asian Pacific Islander Desi Affairs director, like they're making more than me and they're only managing 1 space. Like, and I didn't want to make more than everybody. I just wanted to be equally paid.
Yeah, especially if you have more responsibility. Other people are, one task or one position. That's it. All the focus while you're here running the show all over the place. And yet you're not being, you're not being granted what you're supposed to be given.
Yeah. And then even when like my colleague within Black Affairs left, I was like, hey, so what's happening with his money? They were like, well, what do you mean? And I was like, I want it. Like, I want what he was making more than me. Because like we're both managing 2 spaces,
and it's
and like I have a lot of students.
La Casita. It's same thing, same structures, but different groups.
Yeah. And then so when the search originally happened for Black Affairs, after my colleague had left, I think they had raised it to like 51.5. But then they rose it up to 53. So then, not gonna lie, I was upset. I was like, okay, so then that like 3,000 that you raised me. First of all, like inflation last year was like almost 8%, and so I was losing money being here. And so I said that, but then I was also like, okay, so now they're getting paid 53 just for coming in, and like. So are you going to raise me? And they were like, well, no, y'all are equal. I'm like, okay, but I have like almost 3 years here, like 2.5 years. And so all of the work that I've done is not worth anything. And they were like, well, why do you think that? And I'm like, because day one, they're going to come in making what I make. And like all the work that I've done then hasn't been valuable of anything. And they're like, well, no, don't think of it like that, blah, blah, blah. And so I think a lot of it is just kind of like low-key gaslighting. But I think a lot of it is the profession. The profession will have you thinking that like making $25K, but like working in residence life is like you're making it with a master's degree. But like... I don't think it's only UF is what I'm trying to say. I think that it's higher education as a whole. But like, I mean, definitely it's been happening here too.
I mean, I think that's something big to think about for the next person that's coming in, kind of understanding how they're being played right off the get-go, like they should kind of set their foot.
Yeah.
Now that you were talking a little bit about, Latinos being increasing, we're soon to become an HSI institution. Do you think maybe, possibly, or perhaps those funds could be used to allocate them to La Casita? to kind of pay for those wages now that, right? Because the money's supposed to be for Hispanic, it's a Hispanic serving institution, serve the community. And La Casita, wouldn't it make sense for that money to go there?
It would make sense, Adolfo.
I'm just putting it out there.
I mean, you would think.
You would think, right.
But I'm entry level, so like, what do I know? So, oh my God, if somebody's reading this, they're going to be like, she really thinks she's entry level. I'm being sarcastic. So, yeah. Well, Dr. Vargas, Dr. Nicolas Vargas, who actually works within like Latin American studies, he has actually done research that shows that institutions who are mostly whiter institutions usually are the ones who end up getting the HSI like grant, federal designation, and they end up usually using it for like race neutral things. So for example, like let's say that, and this is like the data, right? He did this whole study. For example, like let's say that University of Florida was needing like a new business college. But let's say that only like 5% of Latinos on campus, after we have like the designated 25% and like the percent that has to be Pell eligible, blah, blah, blah. 5% only of Latinos are attending the business college. That money, if the university so designates, could go to creating a new business college. So it doesn't necessarily have to go to the community. The university can like use it however they want. So that's a huge challenge. I know that I've been bringing it up kind of like to my leadership, and I'm like, hey, this is something that we should start thinking about and like talking about, because it's not like we're aiming to become HSI, like it's gonna happen. Mm-hmm. But also the university is also sneaky in that like they're getting like the right Latinos.
What are the right Latinos? Can you expand on that?
The right Latinos are like the white rich Latinos. So, I mean, going and recruiting, and like, I don't know this for a fact, right? I don't know that they're specifically saying like, we're going here because of this, but patterns show that like students are getting recruited from like these, private schools in like Miami. So private school, you have to pay unless you have like a scholarship, right? And so it's for like your average Joe Schmo, your average Juan or Juanita, right. Like it's getting increasingly harder and harder to get into UF. And so like there's data also that shows that like Black Latinx kids are least likely to come to institutions like this.
Why is that? Why do you think? I mean, there's the IBC, there's like La Casita, the spaces to help the community. Why wouldn't they want to come here?
Racism?
I mean, the numbers do say it, right? Like we're like under 10% with at least the Black community and with Latinos, but we're increasing though. So that's a good thing, right? Latinos, but then again, the question is which Latino is coming in?
Yeah. Well, and my theory is like honestly anti-Blackness within like the Latina community. So the history of Florida is that like first the Cubans, right? But it was majority white Cubans who had money and like didn't want to give it up to Castro. And so they were the ones who came, but then also like the US bankrolled them in. The US was like, cool, you're here, like you are now a US citizen, here's EBT, here's this money so that you can start your own businesses, here's like this and that, which other communities don't have access to. So like the right Latino, right? Whereas like majority of like Black Cubans stayed on the island because Castro was like promising them to like be able to like grow in socioeconomic status. But then also just like along the years, actually have like a paper that we're writing on this, like Colombians, Venezuelans, Ecuadorians, all of these different populations started to come, Peruvians, who were like highly educated. And so they were the right Latinos, right? Because like whiteness in Latin America, like that's why you have the whole mestizaje, everything, right? Because they're trying to like become white. Like más blanquitos son los más bonitos. Si estás prieto, like you're not cute.
That's right.
Blah blah blah. And so they're usually the ones who have like the money, the power, and they're like the elite. So they were the ones that were coming from their countries when there was like political turmoil, etc. Which then I think goes to show just like who is in Florida, who are like the main people in the Latinx diaspora that are like coming to Florida. But I think all of that to say that those then become like the generations are the ones who then end up coming here because of that opportunity. And we don't even know who like the first Latinos on campus were because they could blend in. Like maybe they had an accent, maybe they had like a little bit of, I don't know, sazon, but they tried to hide it, right? Because like they wanted to blend into whiteness to like not get bullied. So like we don't know who those first Latinos were. But thinking about that, I think that I've told some students this before, you know, like if I think, this is me, Bianca Quinones, that if like Black students felt comfortable coming here, I think they would feel more comfortable coming here if like the Latinx community wasn't so anti-Black, because they would know that like 25%, let's say that we were at 25% already of Latinos on campus, plus I think it's like 7% of Black, they would know that those 25% would like have their back and like support them. That's a lot bigger than like only 7%, right? And so with that allyship and like that support, that's more comforting than coming into a PWI with only 7%. Maybe you'll see somebody that looks like you on campus like once a day versus like 25% plus 7, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32. Like where there's allyship there and like support is very different. So I think that there's a lot of work for our community to do in order to be able to support, I think, that like growth. I mean, there's a lot for the university to do, right? But I think that within my role, that's what I can like control and support, so that in order to be able to help like Black enrollment.
Okay, I wanted to ask you, what advice or what would you like to say to the next new director coming in after you? What is something that, or like, what would you like to share? Like,
yes. Hang on, how much time do we have?
that's why I'm moving towards that question.
Okay.
I'm like,
We'll have to do a part 2 because
Yes,
I want to
it.
talk about like, I also want to
Adelante
talk
and
about,
everything.
yeah, like the different programming.
Oh, we'll do a chapter on that.
But then also like why the building is how the building is.
We could do like a little tour, like with the camera and everything.
Yeah.
Let's
I
do
could give
that.
y'all a tour.
For sure.
For the next director, I would say, like, be careful. Be careful, and I mean this in like a lot of different ways. I would say like, be careful that like your values like don't get, pretty much like staying true to your values, right? So like, don't water down your values for the institution. Don't water down the values for like people that you're working with. Don't water down your values for like the students, because the students will meet you like where you're at, you know? Like I started the Latina Empowerment Symposium, and like the students love that. And I'm very passionate about like women and women's rights and like Latina women. And so the students like come through and they like see that in me. I would also say like, be careful that you don't give all of yourself like to this place, because this place will eat you up and chew you out. And like you will be gone, like easy peasy lemon squeezy. And so be careful that like you are creating space for you to regenerate and like take care of yourself. Gainesville is a lot smaller than you think, but then also like building community for me has been super hard. We have been in a pandemic, but also like be careful who you deem to be in your like your closies, because UF is very much a beast in that like, not that people are out to get you, but like you need to be careful who you trust and who you don't trust. And I learned that so early on, and I don't even know how, to where I was just like, wow, I'm gonna kind of keep to myself, do my own thing, because I'm also like very, not that I can be vulgar, not muy like brusca.
Vocal, maybe?
I don't know. I don't know how you say it in English. Like brusca of like, maybe crude. Crude is that?
I think
yeah.
that's
Sometimes I can be like kind of crude in like how I say stuff, or like very direct.
Yeah. I'm telling you, it's that Durango side.
Very direct in like how I say things, or things that I find to be like humorous.
Yeah.
To where I think some people could like, even if we're not at work, because I know like when I'm at work, like very much a facade, like I'm putting on my little professional mask, but like outside of work, but then it can come back like to work. So, and I've been told like, you know, I'm telling you this like feedback because I'm trying to protect you. I'm like, from what? Like,
right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think be careful in that sense. And I would say like, also, one of the biggest things, like once you start getting here and you're like making a little check, start putting money away to make sure that you can cover your bills for 3 months if you need to. So I think if I would have had that, I definitely wouldn't have stayed as long as I stayed. And even now, like I'm leaving because I don't want to sign a new lease.
Are you leaving? Why are you leaving? I guess before we quit, is that like a personal choice? You're trying to pursue something else, or you just don't like how things are running and going and not developing the way that you want?
Yeah, so it's a couple of different reasons. Like I mean, I've definitely been told like my role is no longer like what it used to be. It is now like less. And I know that for me, like I've made my role what I could, and done as much as I could. And for the price that I'm getting, like it's no longer worth it to me to be putting like my heart and my soul into it. Like I love the students, they're great, but like I'm no longer able to like grow from this in the way that I would like, just because of like that cap that they're putting in. But I mean, what led me to like resign most of all was just that I had enough checks to be able to like pay my last month of my lease, and I wasn't going to be able to renew my lease. And I didn't want to be here in Florida anymore anyways. This stay is a little bit crazy. And so I was like, you know what, this is it. Like, either I'm gonna have to sign a new lease and like move, but I know that I'm looking for other jobs in other places, and I don't want to be here anymore, or just like I can pay my last month lease here and like leave and go try something else, and pretty much like bet on myself, you know, bet on that like I know my work ethic, I know me, and like I know that something better is coming for me. I know that something better will always be in my path. And I also say this too because I very much always try to come from a place of like positive, right? Also, my mental health here has not been like okay.
We got to talk about that in the next episode series.
Yeah. I like cognitively, I knew that like depression and stuff was like a chemical imbalance in people's brains, but I never really understood it. I think until now, recently, like I think I like high functioning depression. Like I think that I can see in myself that like there was definitely a point of time where I was like, if I could just disappear, not like trigger warning suicide. I didn't want to do anything to myself, but just like disappear. Like, where's Bianca? Nobody knows. And like me go like live off in Mexico somewhere and just like never come back. Yeah. Yeah. And so I can totally see and understand how mental health like is real. Mental health is definitely, your work can definitely impact your mental health. And like, as much as I love my students, as much as I love the work that I do, as much as like I think that I've definitely like lifted this place in space, it's just no longer worth it to me.
All right. With that note, it's already 3. We'll end it there for now for this first series.
Thank you.
But we will get back to this and we will continue on it.
Thanks.
Thank you for sharing this space and time to discuss these issues because, you know, working in different projects, we have found from our faculty that are going through similar things, specifically minorities or people of color. Mm-hmm. And why is that? Do you think it's just a correlation? Do you think it's by mistake or do you think it's the institution? And those are things, you know, I'm not even saying them, but it's just people to try to like pull these interviews and figure it out.
Yeah, for sure.
Create a better tomorrow for the next incoming person.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, like, I think it's a big shame, right? That, like, people aren't being taken care of a lot better in these roles, especially because they can have high impact on our students.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, you coming in a position such as yours, you know, director, public program, whatever it may be, at that level, you should have full autonomy to do what you want, how you want to run, and then to like grab you and tell you, you know what, we're going to move you from this high-end position to lower your, you know, your position. It's like you're not even giving me an opportunity when I want to transfer out, like almost like you're stuck there because now you just put me lower my position. Now I'm like, good luck trying to apply with this type of position now. What happened to when I was the director? So it's like they get the leverage.
Yeah.
They have leverage over the person.
Well, and I think it happens for a reason, right? I think that because if we were to have, like, if I were to stay here like 5-6 years, imagine all that I could do, right? So like I've been here almost 3 like academic years, and I've already done so much. And so just like all of these different projects that I've been working on, like my biggest fear is that they're just gonna fall away and the next person's gonna have to start from ground zero, create a foundation, and like start all over again. But like I feel like this year I've been able to like have the most traction because of the relationships that I've built across campus, and because now I kind of like know the system and like what needs to happen in order to put things into place. But now like a lot of that knowledge, a lot of that, those relationships, a lot of that, there might not be another person in my role for like a year or more. And so like what happens to all of that work that I did?
And those are questions that are similarly happening with us on our end, you know, even the Samuel Proctor, not to say anything bad, but, you know, it's the transition phase between people coming in and going and the institution not allowing you to stay longer or, you know, things happen. But honestly, like you mentioned, it takes at the very least 3 years, solid years to like build yourself, kind of understand the system. And from there, just kind of like gravitate and grab it and propel it forward, you know?
Yeah.
And to really see the change, bigger changes, and because now you have all this networks that you've created and resources to pull back and forth. And now imagine the next person coming in back to zero again.
Yeah.
Back to zero. And that's unfortunate because it's like, how can you maintain that system to grow and be, you know, if you could just build up from what you've started, it's just the next level. And I think having these interviews will help, hopefully, the next individual coming in and have that lens, at least some type of periphery on their back end.
Hopefully. That's what we can hope for.
Of course. All right, Bianca. Are there any last comments before we conclude this interview? I don't want to take too much of your time. I know it's already 3.
No, I'll see you next time. Tune into episode 2.
Episode 2, y'all, coming up. All right, that will conclude our interview. Thank you.